So Ayurveda takes the whole systems approach. The microcosm and macrocosm are totally interconnected. And the example, when I was listening to Lakshmi talking about sadhana, which is a pretty integral part of our lives, be it in this school or even in your personal practices where you have a ritual, you have a habit of doing something which connects you and grounds you on a daily basis. But for us in the altars, that's our way of connecting to the macrocosm. So if you think about an altar, typically it has an idol. Some of you are probably atheist and don't really have an altar, but I just wanted to connect that concept in that in an altar there is an idol which represents the earth. And there are all these 5 elements, which is what we are really praying, and that's how we're connecting to the nature. So when we talk about macrocosm, there are 5 fundamental friends. And these fundamental friends are earth, air, water, space, and fire. And when you think about an altar, the idol represents earth. There is sometimes, you would see there is water offered in whatever form. So that represents water. The incense is the air. And then there is a lamp or a candle which is lit, which is fire. And then the space which contains it or holds it, that's the space. And that's essentially what is outside in nature and how it is connecting to the microcosm. And we'll learn more about it as we keep going. But I wanted to give you the concept of even when you think of nature and these 5 elements, how they play out in the cosmos. So when you're thinking about air, it's the breeze. Today the weather is really nice, and when you're walking out and, just in nature, the air, the breeze that you feel, that's air. But when that same air goes out of balance and it's an imbalance condition, then it would create this crazy storm. And that's out of balance air. And we'll see how that plays out within your body in a little bit. Then we talk about earth. Earth is, in nature, all the trees, everything which is grounding and stable, and all the vegetables that you see under the ground, that's all representing earth. In your body, it's whatever is holding you, the structure, that represents the earth. Water is all the fluid in the form of blood, in the form of sweat, in the form of even urine, would all be water. And in nature, water is in the form of river. When in balance, it's beautiful flowing river, and you connect with it deeply. But when it's out of balance, it can create a lot of natural disasters. Then moving on to fire. Fire in your body is represented by metabolism, which is what is our focus today, on how the metabolism functions when in balance and when out of balance. So let's go deeper into this and we'll find out more. So the 5 elements that we just talked about: water, earth, air, space, and fire. How does your digestion work? So when we think about it, that within your system, it's usually 50% food, whatever you're taking. So there is 100% space. 50% is food, 25% is water, and 25%, so you should never get up from a table feeling completely full, because that means there is no air. And if there is no air, there is no circulation, which, when we were talking about the 5 elements in nature, that's another significant thing, that air really controls the circulation. So if you are getting up from table after your meal and feeling a little hungry, that's actually good. It shouldn't ever be stuffed. In Indian culture, from where I come from, usually the tradition is that if you're burping after, especially if someone's invited you for a meal, that means you really enjoyed it. And that's actually not a good thing to do, because that means you overstuffed yourself and now you have no space for the air to do its action, for the digestion to get effective. So what happens when the imbalance happens within these 5 elements? Let's see. So this is your stomach, and you have all the 5 elements, but now let's say there is too much water. And it happens, right, that there are certain diets which recommend you to drink a lot of fluids. So thinking about it from the nature and the macrocosm, microcosm perspective, what do you think would happen if you had too much water in your system? That's one. Besides that, what's the effect on the other 4 elements? So the fire, of course, extinguishes. And the fire is the integral part of your digestive system. So, in certain diets where, or I don't know if it's a particular diet or not, but I do remember for weight loss, many years ago, I was suggested that right before your lunchtime, drink about 3 glasses of water, and that will just take care of it. But here is what's going to happen, that the whole system is going to flood, and the fire is going to extinguish because you just extinguished it with a lot of water, or disappear completely, right? And then the air is hardly can do anything because of the water. It can go both ways. It'll either increase the movement too much, which is through going multiple times to the restroom, or just disappear. And then the earth also becomes sluggish because now it just cannot function. There is just too much water. Then, what if there is too much air in the system? What happens? So it's literally like a cyclone within your body, right? So what's that going to do is make the fire variable, because the fire can't stay steady now and it doesn't have that stable effect. It's going to keep moving. So which means, we'll get to what it means in a little bit, but essentially the fire is not going to be stable. The flame is not going to hold steady. And so whatever you put into it, it's not going to break down easily because it's not the steady flame which can handle it, right? And when there is too much air, even the water cannot do much of its work because, it's just occupying. There's just too much vacuum created for anything to enter. And of course, passing a lot of gas. Sometimes that happens, and it can happen both ways, If it's going downwards, it'll be in some form, and if it's coming upward, it's going to be another form. Then, if we have too much air, what effect does it have on the mind? So, lately, I'm not sure how many of you are thinking of that key that you might have left in the car, the cell phone, the charger, or that next thing, or going to the parade, or, just getting through the city. So it's like our mind is constantly working, How much do you get to? Yeah, we'll just get to it in a bit. I'm trying to get to the concept first, and then I'm going to get deeper into it. So just that, how that plays effect on your mind, that if your body is unstable and the digestion is not working in a very stable manner, it's going to have an effect on mind too. So the body, mind is all connected. Anything that you're feeling in the body is going to have an impact on the mind. So all the scatterbrain, that we talk about is essentially too much air, too many thoughts. That's what it is. Just too many thoughts means too much air. I had those interesting animations, so moving on. So, okay, now getting to, oh, wow, okay. So getting to why these things happen, right? So every food that you eat has all 5 elements. So be it popcorn, be it khichdi that you're going to eat, be it takra or the buttermilk that you're going to have, all of that has 5 elements. But whatever food it is predominant in one element. So for instance, popcorn, because it's very light, right? That is air predominant. Air and space sort of go together because space needs air. It is the container of all 5 elements, so they sometimes go hand in hand, not always. So popcorn, now if you ate too much of popcorn, it's going to definitely fill your body because, it has all the 5 elements, but the earth, water, and fire are in much smaller quantity compared to the air and space. So when you've eaten too much of that, after a couple of hours, how do you feel? Like, let's say you ate only popcorns for a meal, especially on a movie night, right? So that's when you experience a lot of airiness. So in your body, everybody here is made up of 5 elements, okay? And there will be something predominant in you versus somebody sitting next to your neighbor. So we all have 5, but there'll be either fire predominant in you and then the others follow, or there'll be earth predominant in you and then the others follow. So if there is a concept in Ayurveda of the like increases like. So if you were of the earth kind, and if you ate too much earthy foods, which would be root vegetables or meat, for instance, that will increase the earth element in you. So, when I say you, I'm just referring as an example. So if the earth element is already there and you're eating more earth, what happens? You become a couch potato. So then the movement doesn't happen. But a little bit of lighter food would suddenly increase the movement because you've introduced the air element. So that's how it goes. So eating too many airy things. So for instance, another example of airy food is salad. So people can digest it depending on where your fire is at. You are able to handle it. But because right now the season is such that the digestion is generally weak because of summer, so if your fire was not very stable, you wouldn't be able to break it down. And so that becomes a very light food, and it's going to make you more air-filled, which will affect the body, and it will also affect the mind. And it may not apply to all because everybody is different. And that's why we have the clinics to really figure that out. So now if we have too much fire, what happens? So that's going to basically eat up everything. And you must have, somebody might be here who needs food every couple of hours. Like if you are not getting your lunch on time, that person might explode. I know my colleague here is like that, and my husband's like that. So if it's, if he comes home and if he doesn't get his dinner by 6:30, he could eat whatever's on the shelf. Thankfully, he's not non-vegetarian. Otherwise, he would probably. I'm not sure. I won't go there. So, so that's the thing. That too much fire, although fire is essential for your digestive system, but too much can be harmful again because it's going to dry out the water. It's going to increase the air element, and it's not going to help the earth either because the land is going to become parched, right, within the stomach. Now, the same thing happens with earth. If we're eating too much earth, and I just gave that example that if there was earth in your body already and you were eating a lot more grounding foods without the balance of other things, it would, again, affect. It will make you very sluggish, and, the feeling of that heaviness, that even though you've had a restful sleep at night, but in the morning you wake up and you feel tired and groggy and you're ready to sleep again, in spite of the fact that you had, 8 hours of sleep. So the key to Ayurveda is really moderation. So there is nothing good, there is nothing bad, but it's all about moderation. You could do everything in your life, but what season, the timing of the day, and how you are applying it to yourself, and that will just be the healthy toolbox for you. So that brings me to our upcoming course, which will happen, I don't know, look out for the announcements. We might have one in fall, but we definitely have in January. It's a 2-month program, and the 2-month program essentially covers all of this that I talked about. So what we are doing today, and normally in the Sangha, is just scratching the tip of the iceberg. But what I just talked about took me a year to study. And so it's like these deep layers, which, where you can really absorb a lot of how the connection really is between the macrocosm, microcosm, and how they interplay with each other. So thank you for receiving me.